Um, Hit full screen. Okay, hey everybody, welcome to Meetup 13 of Capstone. Um, so just a quick overview of where we're at. So I think almost 100% of people, like with the exception of like one or two cases, for yeah, no one here, have received feedback for midterm drafts, I think. Or maybe I'm mistaken. I shouldn't say that. But uh should be close to complete. If you need more feedback, just ask. Um Also, if you haven't signed up for a final presentation, please do so. There's a link which naturally you can't click on. So I'm going to post it in the chat. Um, just 1 second. And yeah, if for some reason uh these times really don't work for you, please let us know ASAP. Um, but we have next Thursday. So we have the last Thursday of the semester. I forget which day that is allocated for presentations, and then we have the second to last Thursday and the subsequent Friday. Those are our current presentation slots, in case you were wondering. And then of course, like I have to tout tout the meetup group. So if you're here on May 7th, there's going to be a cool talk on artificial intelligence. Actually, I don't understand the topic of this talk, but it sounds important. So I'm excited to learn about it. The meetup last month was pretty well attended. I think everyone had a good time. Got to meet new people. So if you haven't gone and you're here, you're looking for a job, looking to get into a data science career, this is a good opportunity. And send me a message if you want to go, and I'll make sure that I know that you're coming. And you have to pay $7 for a ticket, but you get free pizza. Okay, so I just wanted to talk today a little bit about storytelling. So this class is the capstone class. It culminates in you guys submitting a final paper and um, completing a final presentation. And like those are outputs that potentially could be something you want to show off to people, um, something that's like important to you, um, that you may want other people to read. Um, and that means that there could be some advantage for putting more effort into um, the the production quality and presentation aspects of both your final project and your final presentation. So I just wanted to go through like some basics. I feel like all of you guys have seen something like this in Data 608. So if I am boring you, I'll not be too slow. But even when presenting uh, quantitative information, like results from statistical analyses, you know, complex mathematics, things that seem to us as being like very dry, very objective, like just lists of facts. Um, Generally speaking, it's not wise to present that information in a dry way, because people won't even if they're like experts in your area, um, people may sort of tune it out a little bit. But if you use a story, if there's a way that you can present your information with a narrative structure, research has really shown that people will learn what it is you want them to know much better. Um, and basically, this is because humans are like neurologically wired to both hear stories and to tell stories. It's very much how we relate to one another. And there's a lot of neuroscience research that backs this up. And so, for example, if you take, you know, a person who has some information they want to present, and you have them present it in two different ways. So one way where they just read the facts, and another way where they weave the facts into some kind of narrative structure with a story. Um, if you study the brains of people listening to these two alternative presentations, um, when they listen to the story version, many more regions of their brain are activated than when they don't listen to when they listen to the really dry version. And oftentimes this creates synchrony across brain regions between both the storyteller and the listener. And the outcome of this is that the person listening, the person reading retains the information better. Um, I swear this is a scientific paper which has studied this effect. But I think we all feel this is true. Like I think we've all experienced this, and maybe don't need a scientific paper to tell this to us. But stories are an extremely powerful way of conveying information. Okay, so how does a story work? Um, Basically, like a story consists of two things. Um, you start with an initial buildup of tension, um, where you like introduce a conflict, and you sort of like build that tension up, and then you need to have a release of the tension, which is typically what happens at the conclusion of the story. And those are like the two critical ingredients. There's many different ways to effectuate those two goals, um, which are called, and those things are called story arcs. And so there's a variety of different story arcs that you can use to build up tension. So for example, you can introduce some background to the topic, and then you can um, introduce something mysterious, and you can keep building up the mystery, and then talk about how you overcame the mystery and reach a conclusion. Like that's a opening challenge action resolution. You can even like start with the punchline and then like go backwards. There's a lot of ways of doing this, but um and I think you guys have had practice doing this for Data 608. Um but I highly recommend that when you're making your presentations and when you're making the final figures um for your final project, that you try to incorporate this narrative idea into both your final presentation and each figure that you make. Um, so what are some tools that are helpful that could help you construct a story? So um, I would say the first is the big idea. So if you can think about what you've done and find and distill it down to, let's say, a single sentence, that's an extremely powerful way of like getting a starting point for your narrative. Um, Also, it's something I highly recommend you do for every single figure you make, or at least for the most important figures in your both in your presentation and in your paper. So I would say in your final project, you should think about like what are the critical figures that really show what I've done, and for each of those, you should try to find like the big idea and some kind of narrative, some part of your narrative that focuses on that figure. And then and then after you have a big idea, another effective thing you can do is come up with an elevator pitch for your project. So this is like a 3-minute story that you would tell someone who might not immediately be interested. So you want to try to find a way to um, find a short narrative description of what you've done that has a strong like hook at the beginning to draw someone's interest, that brings like a little bit of emotion into it, and that has a good like punchline which completes your narrative. And I think this is super effective when you apply it to visualizations. And I'm sure all of you have different um places where you get inspiration for your visuals. For me, it's for some reason the IPCC reports. I think these are, at least in the sciences, these are the people that are the absolute best at making figures that tell a story. And so this is an example of this is an example of a figure in the IPCC. So if you don't know what the IPCC is, it's just an international body that uh, um, synthesizes research and recommendations on climate change to different countries. Um, and so I think like this is like a perfect example of like a really good figure. The basically the first line is like the punchline of the figure. It doesn't say like, you know, it doesn't tell you what is being plotted. It tells you the purpose. Why is this like? What's the message of this figure? Um, Whoever made this like really synthesized down that message. It's that human influences warm the climate at a rate that is unprecedented. And then the rest of the figure, like it has lots of annotations. It it really like builds up the evidence for that in like a nice like compact way. And this is much more effective than if I had like 6 separate plots of all of these different time series, and then maybe described what was going on in this figure in the context in a paragraph. So um obviously like you have a choice of how much effort to put into doing more writing, how much effort to put into the figures, how much effort into to doing more analysis. And maybe you won't have time to like really optimize the figures, but I highly recommend that you do put a lot of thought into making some of your figures really good. Sorry. Um, then lastly, like another technique you can use for both structuring your presentation and for structuring the most important figures in your project submission is to just make a storyboard where you kind of like make a little visual outline of what each of the graphs in your uh each of the graphs in your presentation or in your paper is going to show. And so you basically like uh you kind of can structure it like a narrative arc, but you can show, you can sort of sketch out what you think will appear in each one. And I highly recommend like if you find it a little bit confusing, like how to turn what you've done into a story, I highly recommend trying to do a technique like this. Um, and I think yeah, so this is just a little image of a hypothetical storyboard. Okay, and then the very last thing is uh, your present, and I think we talked about this a little bit last week. Your presentation should have a very different feel than the paper that you submit. And the reason is that um, in a basically in a presentation you have very little time, but you have like total control over like what the audience is going to see. Um, Whereas in the paper, you're submitting the paper to someone who has like potentially an infinite amount of time to read through your paper and to look for every single detail. So um, you should have a lot more detail in your paper. Like as much, basically your paper should have everything that you think someone like me would need to completely reconstruct your project. Whereas your live presentation should be much lighter on those like technical details and should really focus on the story and like kind of like you know getting us getting us through your narrative. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but that's how I would that's how what I wouldn't do is like for your presentation is like take your paper and then like do okay, this is my introduction, and then like like paste your introduction section, and then this is like my methods, and like I would try to be more um I try to focus more on a narrative structure for your presentation rather than sticking to the rigid structure of your paper.
One thing that I like to do sometimes when there's both a presentation and a paper involved is to at some point, even before I'm done with the paper, is to pause and actually start working on the presentation because the presentation helps to get my mind straight as to know what is the main idea for each part of the paper, right? Even though, as George said, you can, it's more flexible in terms of the flow. You still have some introductory information, right, for your readers or me, for your audience, and then some information about the methods. But what is the core information, the components that you really want your audience to know, right? And that doing the presentation helps us to figure that out. And then by doing that, we can go back to the paper and then emphasize those parts and then add the details that supplement that.
I think that's a really great idea, and it will also help you. That will really help you make like what you think are the core figures of your presentation of your paper, and also like make you like allow you to write a really good abstract and think about like oh were
Kevin,
you
say something.
No, sorry. I'm good. No, I'm going on mute. Sorry.
oh no worries um anyways yeah okay so that's all I had to say. I feel like you guys have seen this stuff before, but this is just a reminder. This is the time to put that knowledge to use, because this is your final paper. And so yeah, are there any questions actually about anything?
Yeah, I have a question. Um, what, where are, I know we have the syllabus and that where are outside of the syllabus, are there any more specific details on the expectations for the presentation in terms of how long or anything like that?
It's
I
going
feel
to
like it must be
be,
somewhere. I'm just
I
missing.
believe our expectation is 10-minute presentation.
Okay, 10 minutes. All right.
Um, Someone correct me if I've completely messed up the math, but I think that's
Is it 10 minutes including Q&A or 10 minutes plus Q&A?
um 10 minutes plus Q&A
Okay, thank you.
plus brief Q&A.
10 minutes is quick.
Yeah.
So for our presentation, which, 10 minutes, is it us just giving like a background, or are we talking about like our analysis and methods used, how we compared to other papers? Like, is there specific things we need to touch upon?
Yeah, so you should look at like what you've done in your final project, um and you should turn it into a story and tell the story. That's what you should do. So like it depends, and so what that looks like depends on what you did. So you should talk, and so that could involve the problem that you're interested in. So your case, like um in your case the problem, is this mysterious like so you sort of can tell the story of like the rebates, like
Not being
what
publicly, they don't exist out
yeah,
there.
like what other people have done to try to deal with it, like what you did in response to that, like, and then what you found, and then try to connect it all together. um it's not it's not like easy to do, but it's worth putting, whatever story, like it's worth like thinking about it, like thinking about how it makes sense as a story, because you only have 10 minutes. You can't like go um you can't go super in depth.
Cool, thanks.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Is that clear?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm at a conference right now, so I'm hearing all these. I'm actually sitting in on a lot of these 10-minute presentations, and um, I think a couple of you have sort of said, "Oh, that is not a lot of time to present on something that I've been working on for a whole semester," right? And so that is the biggest challenge, which I am still working on. That is hard to do, but one of the suggestions that has helped over the course of the years is that these presentations feature your work, right? And so focus on what you have done, focus on your own project, but use a literature review to as the jumping as a springboard into your presentation. So, I mean, into your project. So it is why am I doing this? Why is this important, right? So that's what we've been sort of emphasizing since the beginning of the semester, and all of you have that down. So putting that at the front, maybe a slide or two, maybe three, but then the focus should be, what did you do? What did you find? And what are the implications in connection with the literature? So that is a very broad sense of how you could put all of this together.
Yeah, I guess another comment. You know, I was just thinking in terms of presentation, I had gone back and forth with you guys about wanting to put mine up on the web instead of like doing it in a PowerPoint deck. You took a look at it, George. You think it seems all right, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need to, I mean, like, um, yeah, you can, so I'm not 100% sure what you mean. Like,
The end result, the end deliverable will be, you know, something that is purposely made to put on the internet
yeah,
so that I can share it and drive traffic to it and make people think I'm actually
yeah,
as smart as Diana.
yeah.
Yeah, you can. I'm not sure what you're planning to do, but Canva for $30 a month will. I have Canva Pro and it's like 10 or 20 bucks a month. You can they along with a lot of other places will let you can make a presentation in there and then you can publish it as view only right there and give a link that gets into round. So like for some of my smaller projects here, I've done that for that same reason. It's like you can just go to the link and they also let you download it and stuff.
So maybe I could say this. So I wouldn't want you to, like, let's say you write your paper. You like, I saw your write up and it on the internet, it looks really nice. Like it has really good visuals and stuff like that. I wouldn't want you to just kind of open that up and scroll through it with all the text. Um, but what would be great, so let's say you were like giving a pitch of this idea. Like I know that you've been thinking about doing that, or maybe have been doing that like at various points to people. And I don't know how you if you have to give presentations, but try to do something like that. Like try to imagine that as the structure. Like if that's yeah, I don't know if that helps.
It does. Um, I was kind of thinking of having like knowing exactly where to show and then saying, okay, here's more. So I was thinking of pulling that up and showing, but I'm not gonna like there's 40 pages of research in there. I'm not gonna show all
Yeah.
that.
So I
Nobody
mean,
cares
how
about
about
that.
just like pull the code for the important figures into like, I mean, you could do like, is it like, did you write it in Quarto?
The whole thing, yeah.
Yeah,
And
so you
that's
could
one
just
thing.
what just do it. Could you just do like a reveal JS with like the with like the figures with like the key figures and maybe like a few annotations and just walk through. And if you like have a tool, let's say, I'm not sure what your final output would be. Like you could show that off on a website. That's totally fine. Um,
So one of the good things about using Quarto, by the way, is that you can have an output type of PDF or an output type of HTML. So you can publish your whole document into HTML. And of course, there's slides and HTML websites and table of contents and all that. And then you can drag the whole thing up to S3 for S3 static web hosting. And I think that's like a couple of cents a month.
that's nice.
Yeah.
Anyways, like I don't want to put like constraints. If you think that there's a right way to present, um, don't tell me, don't let me tell you not to do it that way. But it's just my suggestion not to scroll through your paper. But if you think that's the most effective, then I trust you guys to know what's best. That's just my it's just my general recommendation.
Should there be like a introductory slide and then a conclusion slide of like, I guess the introductory, just like
Yeah,
introducing what,
so you definitely want to introduce your problem, and you
right?
definitely want to have an ending, a conclusion of some type. I would say that's like really important. Um, it yeah, what that conclusion is like, okay, who knows, but yeah, definitely like that's super important for these types of presentations.
The conclusion should, I think, in general, connect your findings and implications with the literature that you reviewed, right? Because that's the foundation of your project. And so that there should be some sort of connection, whether it's application or research or whatever based. Yeah.
Anyways, it's not always an easy thing to do this. Like I actually, when I'm making presentations, sometimes I'm like, I hate like going to this mode where like I really hate what I did. Like, how do I make this interesting? And I like bounce around for a while. So until I find, but then usually, eventually, like you'll find something, a good way to talk about it, and that'll make you feel better. It's not, but it's not easy. But it's worth it.
Yeah. For some of you, it might be interesting to add on like a reflection slide at the very end because and then just talk about the struggles that you encountered and how you overcame that. I'm thinking particularly with, well, it depends on how you want to frame it, Ron, but the fact that you found there's no access to the data that you need for your project, your original idea.
Struggles are super interesting. I agree. Like it depends, of course. Like I mean, like if your struggle is like, oh, I had to debug my code,
Mm-hmm.
sure, like everyone had to do that. But yeah, like if the struggle is like like mentioning a struggle is super something is good to do, generally
Yeah.
speaking. Because
Yeah.
oftentimes that points to like inherent challenges in like an area.
Where would the reflection slide be towards the end of the presentation? Is that appropriate?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best place for the reflection slide. It's either going to be at the very end or the very beginning. So
A couple of slides pointing out to various pivots.
Yep, that works too. Yep, I can think of where you might put that tonight, Deanna, for your project.
In terms of pivoting, could I do a group brainstorm?
yeah,
Sure.
So my project is simulating different personal carbon trading schemes in New York City, essentially revolving around trying to incentivize people to take the MTA over a car by like financially charging them for the carbon that they use is the technical definition, but there hasn't been a lot of study into it, and there hasn't been a lot of implementation of these policies, particularly not in the way that I'm doing it. So I'm having trouble finding literature that is giving me examples of different ways I could implement this tax. So right now, the only thing that I have is like a rebate system, essentially, or like a reward system for taking the MTA more frequently. But I wanted to just sort of throw out to the group before I do anything else, if anybody had any thoughts on a way that you could incentivize riding the train or de-incentivize taking a car, particularly a ride share. Because in a perfect world, this would be a cap and trade market where everybody in New York had a certain amount of transportation carbon they were allowed to use, or transportation carbon emission they were allowed to use. And if you ran out, you had to buy from people who hadn't used theirs. But I'm having trouble translating that into mechanisms that actually work within the system.
I think okay. Maybe I'll let. So I think it's okay not to. I think a cap and trade that sounds quite complex. Um, to implement in this agent-based model.
Mhm.
I think probably it's fine to study just to study like changing the pricing, like at least as an initial, at least as an initial test to see what is feasible, like as a sanity check, like just yeah, studying either like a rebate as you mentioned, for transit use, or yeah, or some sort of other tax, uh yeah, for like, you know, if you like, I think within the world of the model it will be easier to implement such a tax than it would be practically speaking in real life, like um but yeah, like I don't know, like I think it's okay to do, for feasibility purposes, to do a simple scheme where you just increase the cost of different different transportation schemes, at least in my opinion. Does that make sense? Like, so I'm sure like within the mat sim model you could just like put a cost, you could just put a cost on different stuff and and study what happens.
Mhm.
I know
And
that have you like looked at like other countries that have like implemented a similar system? I mean, it's not, I know Luxembourg has like a free public transportation system. Um, I don't know if it's the sort of along the lines of where you're focused on, but um, yeah, I think looking at like other systems, other public transportation systems, and I just know like Luxembourg what is one country that like has made public transportation free. And I don't know what the result has been with in terms of carbon emissions in that particular place, but I don't know if it's useful to look to see if there's been like studies done on particular countries that have adopted that particular strategy.
That is a good idea. The idea for this is actually coming from a pilot program in Lahti, Finland, that essentially made like a mobile app that didn't penalize people necessarily or didn't incentivize them either. It just tracked how they traveled via car or transit or bike or walking, and then sort of just tallied it for the person to be aware of. Um, and this is an idea of expanding that concept to New York City. The premise of incentivizing would actually is already sort of um, a stretch because obviously the fare is $2.90. So making it free is in itself an incentive, and maybe that could be my control at which I could compare what if we make it free versus what if we incentivize it. And actually, like, oh, you ride it so many times, you get a certain discount on your taxes, or um, I don't know, money back, something like that.
I know they had a pilot program. The MTA had a pilot program. They ended it, I think, last year, where like certain bus lines were free.
Yeah.
And I don't know particularly what came of it, what that pilot program, what they found that, I don't know if it like was not financially feasible to continue it, but I think maybe that's another area to look at in terms of that type of like experimentation that along those lines of like incentivizing people to take mass transit or public transit. Um, so that's just another option.
so, by the way, like that's a kind of fascinating issue in its own right, just because I think like people are super polarized on whether the buses should be free, because it provides some clear benefits. So first of all, like the bus like dwell times like decrease, and so the buses actually get quite a bit faster because people just get on and get off. But then like some people complain, like I don't know, some people complain about like some social aspects. I think it's, yeah, like about yeah, I don't know. So it's interesting.
One of the mayoral candidates for the Democratic Party is that one of the, I don't know how to call it, but one of the things that it's on his platform is to make buses free. Now, I don't know how he would do that because the MTA is a state-run agency, so, but
It's the best type of promise to make. Why not?
yeah, yeah. So, but I don't.
Lately, it seems like more and more people think all the buses are free.
Ooh.
No, I mean, so many people just go in the back door, and
Yeah.
I don't remember that being as prevalent in prior
Yeah,
years.
it's like hopping turnstiles and all that. All the kids just think it's okay now.
Well, the kids all have their Omni Pass, so it doesn't actually, if they're students, they're not going to pay anyway. So
Mm.
they always got on the back of the bus, which was fine because there were kind of two entrances during the end of school time period, and that worked. But like sometimes the majority of people who are getting on the bus who are not students are not paying.
Mm.
And I don't remember this being like that before.
I have a question. So does the Matsim model will like we'll keep track of like just carbon emissions, or will you be able to like capture something like what is MTA revenue as a result of like
I think I could capture MTA revenue. There have been different expansions that people have built, and I'm looking into them now.
I think so. I think it would be fascinating because one of the things you're interested in is equity, and I know that like uh the people making the decision of what to take like are going to be varying quite a lot in their and how much money they have basically, and probably will therefore respond very differently to different types of incentives. I think there's probably a lot of possibility to study um yeah, like the outcome, and particularly the equity outcome from different types of like ways of imposing a price for carbon. So
Yeah,
like I think some people may not care at all about transit being free. Some people may care quite a lot. Um, and some people might respond to other incentives better. Don't know.
Another program that I'm thinking of is not MTA related. Maybe it is, but they're increasing the toll for drivers between boroughs, right? Is that right? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
If you
congestion
drive
pricing.
into downtown, if there's congestion pricing and
yep, that's what it's called.
Yeah, and that is something that I'm arguing this is a mechanism for augmenting,
Mm.
because this is all based on a bunch of New York City goals and incentives by 2050, including to have 80% trips in the city be on sustainable mass transit, up from 67% now. And so the premise of my argument is, well, congestion pricing isn't going to do that by itself, in addition to all of the logistical infrastructure things that need to happen with the MTA. How do we just get people riding it again?
yeah.
And so initially I was hoping that the incentive program could be like, well, it also encouraged people to pay their fare. But I think ultimately in this vision of a city, although it didn't really explicitly say it, transportation would eventually, I think, have to be free based on everything else. But it's a bigger question. But even just comparing the incentivization of making MTA free versus the incentivization of you get a reward program going with it, to try to get to that benchmark of ridership.
And I would be curious, like, this might be the dumbest, most naive suggestion, but can you like add bus lines, like, in the model? Maybe that's stupid.
I
Like,
can. It's
like,
not. It's not. It saves a lot of computational power by not actually being like a physical map. It's just a number of connections.
Yeah, yeah.
With a certain amount of queue time to each is how it's able to model something as big as the whole transit system.
Because there could be like, because it could be that like no matter how incentivized transit is, if there's like no way to get from, let's say, like,
If you're in a
God
transportation
forbid,
desert,
Brooklyn
it
to
doesn't
Queens
matter
without
how
going through
Brooklyn, yeah.
Manhattan.
Yeah,
Right.
Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, that's a hated trip. Bronx to
Right.
Queens is even more ridiculous.
Right.
Like,
The
like
premise
you
of this
never.
is that the city has a long list of things that it is improving in transit, including addressing transportation deserts. And things like you were talking about, which is slow buses. No one's going to take a bus if it's slower than walking, which means we have to cut both the amount of time that buses take to stop and pick people up and the amount of time that it takes traffic to move, which is where congestion pricing comes in.
I
And
know
the idea is it's so backed up with needing money that there's just no way that they're gonna give anything away for free and not start charging more.
Right.
I
I'm not saying this is feasible. I'm just looking at it. I'm not saying this is, I have no funding sources for this. None of my research is into ways to fund this sort of scheme.
I would also look at London because that's basically what the congestion pricing in New York, it's based off the London model. I don't know how long it's been in effect in London. So I would look at to see what's changed in terms of the number of people that's taking mass transit or public transit, and also look at the carbon emission levels in London.
Yeah. One of the problems with this topic is that it all changed with COVID. So it's things before 2020 are often not great for what I'm trying to do now, because so much has changed, particularly in how people use transit and where people work.
If you do ever go to London and take the subway, be sure to ride through Piccadilly Square, because when that lady says Piccadilly Square over the phone, it'll just make you giggle.
Like, always like Elephant and Castle. That's my favorite London metro stop.
Piccadilly Square.
Yeah.
Is there,
Oh, go on. Sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, is there any kind of adjustment for how far people have to travel, how far they live from work? If oftentimes people who are lower in lower income brackets live further from their place of employment. So if you're penalizing people for their carbon in some way, this could be kind of penalizing people who are in lower income brackets just by virtue of their employment situation, or
Yes, that is correct. That is part of my analysis, is that I'm going to simulate this, and then based on the results, look at who used it, who benefited from it, and look at it geographically based on home location, because we can correlate income to neighborhood in New York. And so we'd be able to tell, if it's concentrated in certain parts of Manhattan versus concentrated in certain parts of the Bronx, we'll know who is and who is not receiving benefit. And that is one of my interests. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Do the agents have they each have their own income, right?
They each have their own, they will, yeah, they'll have a demographic.
So you can even like very directly measure the what's it called, impact, the socioeconomic impact, just as a model output, I believe.
I think so, yeah. especially if part of it is money is a financial incentive. How much money are they making and who is making it?
And in the model, can you just like arbitrarily, like, if I am not an expert on it. But people like in the model are like economic agents, right? Like, so they each have a journey they have to make on a regular basis, and they each have an income, and then they are like each optimizing over something, right? And that's how
So
the
it's assumed that they have a home and a destination during the day, whether that destination is a primary school, a university, or a work job. And then they are commuting to that and then from that.
and then there's like some internal rule that
Yes,
like has
there
different
are
parameters for each agent.
mhm.
And there's probably like a time value for money thing there, right?
Right. And that's something I need to generate and be able to defend how I calculated it.
Or I'm assuming the model like has specified that, because that would be super hard to come up with in like a short period of time. Like, I assume that's how the agents work, right? Because otherwise, like, how would they decide? How would they respond to any? Unless they're just responding to what is the fastest journey.
Um, it is in response to stimulus that they are more likely to choose a certain route a certain way. But though I'm working on those mechanisms right now because I'm building the population right now, the synthetic population.
Okay, so you get to customize it quite a bit.
Yeah.
It sounds
Yes,
kind of fun. Like, it sounds like Sim City, but like on extreme steroids. Like
something like that, yeah.
With like access to like extreme internal mechanisms of Sim City. But I would totally look and see if the agents are responsive to the price. I assume the agents are responsive to the price of things and to the time it takes, and see what see what like you can change that affects those two things, and then then it would be, yeah, look and see how sensitive agents actually are. Like, is there a mechanism where like a small input leads to a big effect, or are there mechanisms where you put in a lot of effort and no behavior changes? Like, those would be like super impactful to find. But you could do stuff like, what if I charged like, you know, what if I put a tax of like X dollars on each rideshare, or on this type of car journey? Like, what is the percentage change in ridership usage for like a $1 increase in this tax? And is it like nonlinear, or is it linear? And then compare that to like making like transit cost $1 less or something. Would be would be interesting. I don't know.
That is most certainly the goal. Another group of individuals used this simulation to do congestion pricing. They did it on a population from 2016, but it was that exact mechanism where they set traffic at no toll. They set it at $9 and something, and they set it at $14. And then they were actually able to fix. And then they looked at how traffic was rerouted or how traffic changed and how much money was brought in from that toll.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So a few classes left, guys.
Yeah. Are you excited? You said you were excited already.
Me? Oh, I'm so done with this. I would have stuck around for the AI degree, the AI master's degree if it was around, but I'm gonna go to paramedic school in the fall.
You're just becoming overeducated. This is probably a good thing, but
Dude, if I win the lotto, I'm gonna quit my job and go to school for the rest of my life.
that would be awesome.
Yeah. And buy all the guns. If I win the lotto, I'd
The
buy
huge
all the
arsenal.
guns.
You can open a tank museum.
Yeah. I have a house in Arizona just to go buy all the guns in Arizona because you can't have them in California. Arizona, you can buy like flamethrowers and tanks and, you know,
Howitzer.
yeah, big guns.
Are you guys going to graduation?
I'm going. Are you're
You
gonna
are
come out for it
traveling?
on May 30th?
That
We gotta
I
come.
was gonna
incentivizes me
be out of
to
town, but like now I'm probably gonna be in town.
right.
We gotta throw a big party or something.
We do. How do we do this? Are you all graduating? I would assume so, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm graduating.
Yeah, we need a party or something, George. How do we do that?
How do we throw a party?
Can you guys get a
Yes.
conference room or something at the campus in
Yeah.
Midtown?
Yeah,
Like a
we
big
can do
one?
that. I mean,
Set up some
is that
strip
where you would
poles,
want to have a party?
get some volunteers.
Like, I, I mean, okay.
If you guys want,
Would you
I
guys
am
like a
going.
party?
So Wednesday, the 2 days before we graduate, there is a really awesome jazz venue called Somewhere Nowhere. It's in the city. It's an early venue. It starts at like 7:30 or 8 and it goes to about midnight. It's called Somewhere Nowhere on Wednesday. 2 days before we graduate, I'll be there. You guys should all come. It is like the best venue ever.
Sweet. Thank you for telling me. I'm gonna remember that.
It's Angela, you have to come down and stay a couple of days. That way you can go swing dancing with us.
I want to do that. I have no coordination. You're gonna be like, Angela, I'm done with you.
I won't
Somewhere
be like
no
that. Come on now. Somewhere Nowhere on Wednesday. That's the
jazz.
place like at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's where, it's like $20,000 a table. But before that, when the jazz people are there, it's cheap. I mean, drinks are $20, but that's New York City.
All right, I have it on my calendar, so I'm going to figure out how
I'll
to
be there.
make this.
My whole dance troupe will be there. Mo's gonna go.
Oh my God. I did not know you had a dance troupe.
I did, yeah. Yeah, we
Sweet.
performed there. My dance partner, or my former dance partner for when I lived in New York, she's gonna be teaching the lesson there.
That's cool. Okay, so party. Okay.
Yes,
Are you
Wednesday.
guys serious? Like, if you guys want a party, send me a message, or like we can arrange for something.
I want a party for all of you. This is a big deal.
And Jill's like, I got a couple of PhDs, you nerds.
Overrated. What day is that's a Friday, right? The 30th?
Yeah, graduate on Friday. We walk on
Do you
Friday.
know what time the graduation ceremony is? Because we could plan for it to happen on the same day, the party.
I believe it's at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.? Okay.
Yeah.
That's an early.
at Barclays Center.
Oh.
Yeah, the Knicks and the Knicks, they're all gonna be there. Probably not.
The Nets.
Liberty might be playing, but I'm not sure.
I went to a graduation, Brooklyn College or something, and it was in the morning, and I think we were done by like 1.
Okay.
One of my friends graduated
Have
during
like-
the COVID.
Maybe we can have like a luncheon party thing.
Just meet somewhere for lunch after.
Yeah. We could
Afternoon cocktails.
Yes.
That's a great idea.
I can carry you home, Diana.
But it's fine.
Well, that's right. You guys have Lyft and Uber there too.
Or buses and subways.
It's true. There's even city bikes, but
Right.
maybe you shouldn't
Not
use them when
after
drunk.
cocktails.
Right.
City bikes are also ridiculously expensive. Like
Yeah,
I've ridden
seriously.
one like 10 blocks and it's like $1 a block. It was
And
a good
apparently
idea
it feels
until it
like
was a
riding
private
cheese.
company. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like
I
they're
never knew
not
that.
really good bikes.
It's like,
No, they're a million pounds.
Right.
So you don't steal them and throw them in the Hudson, which people do anyway.
I'll say I use a city bike. It's my primary transportation, but I have quit using the e-bikes because they're so expensive. Like I don't know, like I yeah. Like it used to be $2 to get to cross Manhattan basically. Now it's like at least $10. So it's really sad because it's like such an efficient, ineffective way of getting across the city, as long as you know the route that doesn't get you killed. But yeah.
It's inflation. When I was a kid, I went to the store and I got a pack of cigarettes, a gallon of milk, and a carton of eggs for like $1.95.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm older. I'm old.
this kind of makes
And
the
back then
MTA
they'd
seem.
sell cigarettes to kids. So
They sure would. Yeah, we used to not smoke them, but we could buy them.
And then what do you
Didn't
do
have
with them?
seatbelts in cars either. My mom had a Pinto. You guys look that one up on YouTube.
No, it's a Ford, right? The Ford Pinto.
Yeah, and if you hit it in just the right way in the back, it explodes.
Oh, I had a friend who had a car like that. It was which one was it? Like yeah, it was one of the convertible, like rear engined. Forget what it was.
Carmen Gia.
It was like the unsafe at any speed one. The Ralph Nader special. What made Ralph Nader famous. I'll figure it out. Yeah, the Corvair. The Chevy Corvair. It's an incentive to drive too fast so you don't get rear-ended.
Was this the one where the back seat faced backwards so you could like see the car as it came up to hit you? And it turned out that that was super bad for like surviving rear-ending car crashes.
You know, the one that I was in didn't, but
Hey, hi.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
So
You know what I'm
See.
talking about, right? Like the last row of seats is
Yeah, I feel like
faces
in like some
backwards.
station wagons or
Yeah.
minivans. Yeah. That does seem sketchy. This one wasn't like that. This one was unsafe because of the rear engine. So it had like it had really bad handling, due to I guess a really imbalanced weight distribution, and then um maybe it had the potential to explode. I don't know,
Jeez.
but it never happened to me, so
Good.
I'm glad. And I wasn't the one who was driving it, so it's okay.
Yeah, y'all gotta find us on LinkedIn and stuff too. Try to get your jobs over at NBC or with our new California Fire startup that Angela and I are starting.
Right. I'm in the job market. Did I tell you guys that already?
Are you serious?
Oh,
Kind of,
really?
yeah. I started applying for jobs.
You gonna leave academia? I'll put a good word for you.
Is that because of Dax?
Not a choice to leave academia. It's so hard right now. Yeah, because we don't know if the funding for year 5 is going to be renewed.
I mean, we should whatever. We should hire you if you wanted it as a doctoral lecturer. Like we need like more desperately, but that is
You want to become a biostatistician?
It's probably more
You want to go to
lucrative.
work in
We
entertainment?
we need someone. We're gonna die.
Oh, are you hiring, Matt?
We're actually like looking to hire someone for the next cycle because what my coworker's leaving for
Oh,
Iowa for his postdoc.
oh,
So
wow.
yeah, a VA, a neuropsych VA. So
Okay.
yeah, we're actually kind of in the market right now. So I'm unironically saying I could pitch you because they're looking for someone with teaching experience and a strong statistical background.
Oh, nice. Yeah, would you send me whatever, what do you call that, job posting?
I don't know if the job posting's up yet because we
Okay.
are really slow down there, but I could like ask for like a description to send
Oh.
and if it would be okay to like pitch your name to it. Just